Good evening, and welcome back to The Resting Researcher. Tonight, we're exploring a kingdom of life that exists mostly out of sight, a network of organisms that connects forests, breaks down the old to make way for the new, and operates on a timescale that makes trees look impatient. We're talking about fungi, not just the mushrooms you see sprouting after rain, but the vast underground networks they're connected to. The mycelium, the hidden threads that weave through soil, connecting tree to tree, recycling nutrients, and quietly sustaining entire ecosystems. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. And if these calm explorations help you unwind, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It helps others discover this gentle approach to science. I hope this journey into the fungal world is just fascinating enough to hold your curiosity, but soothing enough to guide you toward peaceful rest. And if you stay awake through it all, at least you'll understand a little more about the silent architects of the forest floor. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let's descend into the hidden kingdom beneath our feet, where life works slowly, patiently, and almost entirely unseen. For most of history, people assumed mushrooms were plants. They grow from soil after all. They don't move. They seem as rooted to one place as any tree or flower. But fungi are not plants. They're not animals either. They belong to their own kingdom of life, as distinct from plants as plants are from us. The key difference is how they get energy. Plants capture sunlight and turn it into sugar through photosynthesis. Animals eat other organisms, but fungi do something different. They digest externally. Instead of taking food into their bodies and digesting it inside, fungi release enzymes into their surroundings. These enzymes break down organic matter, dead leaves, fallen logs, even living roots, into simpler molecules. Then the fungus absorbs those molecules directly through its cell walls. In a sense, fungi eat by surrounding their food and dissolving it. It's a slow, patient process. Not hunting, not harvesting, just persistent chemical breakdown. And while we often think of mushrooms as the main event, they're really just the fruiting bodies, the reproductive structures. The part of the fungus we see is like the apple on a tree. The real organism is underground. It's called mycelium, a network of thread-like strands, each one thinner than a human hair, called hyphae. These hyphae grow through soil, wood, and organic matter, branching and merging, extending in all directions. Mycelium can be tiny, a few centimeters across, or truly enormous. The largest known organism on Earth is a fungus. A honey mushroom in Oregon's Blue Mountains spans over 2,000 acres and may be thousands of years old. Its mycelium runs beneath the forest floor, mostly invisible, breaking down wood and connecting with tree roots across an area larger than 1,600 football fields. Most fungi are decomposers. They break down dead matter, recycling nutrients back into soil. Without them, forests would be buried under layers of fallen leaves and dead wood. Nothing would decay. The carbon locked in dead tissue would stay locked forever. Fungi are the reason forests can sustain themselves. They close the loop, turning death back into nourishment. But not all fungi live on the dead. Some form partnerships with living plants, especially trees. These relationships, called mycorrhizae, are among the most important and least visible connections in nature. The fungus wraps around or even penetrates the tree's roots. In exchange for sugars the tree produces through photosynthesis, the fungus provides water and nutrients it absorbs from the soil. It's a trade. Energy for minerals. Sunlight converted to sugar, traded for phosphorus, nitrogen, and moisture, drawn from far beyond the tree's root zone. Some estimates suggest that over 90% of land plants form these partnerships. Almost every tree in a forest is connected to fungi, and because fungal networks can link to multiple trees, they create an underground web, sometimes called the wood wide web. Through this network, trees can share resources. A large tree in full sunlight might send excess sugars through the fungal network to a younger tree growing in shade. Nutrients flow where they're needed. Information in the form of chemical signals may even travel through the mycelium, warning neighboring trees of insect attacks or drought stress. It's not intentional. Fungi aren't thinking or planning, but the effect is cooperation on a scale we're only beginning to understand. Now, let's talk about structure. A single fungal hypha is essentially a tube, a hollow strand with a cell wall made of chitin, the same material that forms insect exoskeletons. Inside the tube is cytoplasm, containing nuclei and organelles, all flowing slowly along the length of the hypha as it grows. The tip of each hypha grows by extending forward, secreting enzymes, absorbing nutrients, and branching when conditions favor it. Growth is slow but relentless. A mycelial network can expand several centimeters per day under ideal conditions, colonizing new territory bit by bit. When conditions are right, usually after rain, some of the mycelium concentrates its energy and resources to produce a fruiting body, a mushroom. This structure grows rapidly compared to the mycelium itself, sometimes appearing overnight. The mushroom's job is reproduction. Underneath its cap, on thin blades called gills, or in tiny pores, millions of spores develop. These spores are microscopic, lighter than air, and when released, they drift on the wind. Most spores land in places where they can't grow, but a few find suitable environments, moisture, organic matter, the right temperature, and they germinate, sending out new hyphae to start the cycle again. Fungi reproduce in other ways too. Mycelium can fragment, with each piece continuing to grow independently. Some fungi produce specialized spores that survive harsh conditions for years, waiting for the right moment to germinate. But the mushrooms we see, the ones that sprout in forests and meadows, and sometimes in our lawns, are the most visible part of this hidden kingdom. And they come in astonishing variety. There are fungi that glow in the dark, producing bioluminescent light through chemical reactions. Fungi that form shelf-like brackets on tree trunks, living for decades and growing new layers each year. Fungi that look like coral, or fingers, or tiny birds' nests filled with egg-shaped spore packets. Some fungi are edible and delicious, chanterelles, morels, porcini. Others are deadly. The death-cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides, contains toxins that destroy liver cells. A single mushroom can be fatal, and there's no antidote. Still others are hallucinogenic, containing compounds like psilocybin that alter brain chemistry and perception. These fungi have been used in rituals and medicine for thousands of years, though their effects are powerful and unpredictable. But most fungi are neither edible nor poisonous to humans. They simply exist, breaking down matter, forming partnerships, spreading spores, and continuing their slow work beneath the surface. As we pause here, picture a forest floor, leaves scattered, logs slowly rotting, ferns and moss growing in the shade. Beneath that surface, invisible and mostly ignored, is a vast network. Threads spreading through soil, connecting roots, dissolving dead wood, moving water and nutrients from place to place. The forest you see is only half the story. The rest is underground, silent and unseen, held together by fungi. The wood wide web isn't a metaphor. It's a physical network, measurable and real. Scientists have traced nutrients moving through fungal connections between trees. They've seen chemical signals transmitted through mycelium. They've mapped the architecture of these underground links. What they've found is remarkable. A single fungal network can connect dozens of trees, sometimes different species, across large areas. These networks are not random. They have structure, nodes, and hubs, almost like a transportation system. Older, larger trees tend to be more connected. They're the hubs, linked to many smaller trees and to multiple fungal networks. Younger trees, saplings struggling in shade, often depend on these connections for survival, receiving nutrients and sugars they can't produce on their own. In a study of Douglas fir forests in British Columbia, researchers found that mother trees, the oldest and largest individuals, support their offspring through fungal networks. Seedlings growing in the shade of these large trees receive carbon from the adults, channeled through mycorrhizal fungi. It's not charity. The mother trees benefit too, by ensuring the survival of the next generation. A healthy forest with many trees supports richer fungal networks, which in turn support all the trees. It's a feedback loop, where cooperation increases everyone's chances of survival. But the network isn't always benevolent. Some plants are parasitic, tapping into the mycorrhizal network to steal resources without contributing anything in return. Certain orchids have no chlorophyll. They can't photosynthesize. Instead, they connect to fungi that are linked to nearby trees, siphoning off sugars produced by those trees. Even more surprising, some fungi themselves are parasitic. They attack living trees, penetrating bark and wood, slowly consuming the tree from the inside. Honey mushrooms, the same species that forms the world's largest organism, are aggressive parasites. They kill trees to feed on the dead wood. It's a reminder that nature isn't always cooperative. Competition and parasitism are just as much a part of the story as partnership. Still, the complexity of these networks is astonishing. Mycologists are discovering that fungal mycelium can sense and respond to its environment in ways that seem almost intelligent. When mycelium encounters a source of nutrients, it grows more densely in that direction, sending more hyphae to colonize the food source. When it meets a barrier, it grows around it, exploring for gaps and weaknesses. Some experiments have shown mycelium solving mazes. Researchers place food sources at multiple locations in a maze and introduce mycelium at the entrance. Over time, the fungus grows through the maze, exploring dead ends, retracting from unsuccessful paths, and eventually connecting all the food sources through the shortest possible routes. It's not intelligence in the way we understand it. There's no brain, no central processing, but the mycelium behaves as though it's optimizing, making decisions based on efficiency and resource availability. This behavior emerges from simple rules, followed by each hypha. Grow toward nutrients. Retract from areas with no resources. Strengthen connections that prove useful. Over time, these simple behaviors create complex, efficient networks. It's similar to how ant colonies function. No single ant knows what the colony needs, but collectively, through local interactions, they build nests, find food, and defend their territory. Mycelium works the same way. Decentralized intelligence, distributed decision-making. Another fascinating property of mycelium is its resilience. If part of the network is damaged, the rest continues functioning. Cut a mycelium in half, and both halves can survive independently. The network reroutes resources, compensates for losses, and keeps growing. This resilience has made fungi survivors. They've been on Earth for at least 600 million years, possibly longer. They survived mass extinctions that wiped out most other life. After the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs, fungi thrived in the darkness, feeding on the massive amounts of dead plant and animal matter. In fact, there's evidence that fungi may have been among the first organisms to colonize land, long before plants. Fossils suggest that early fungi formed partnerships with the very first land plants, helping them extract nutrients from barren rock and soil. Without fungi, plants might never have left the water. The partnership that created the first forests may have started with fungal threads spreading across wet stone, preparing the ground for roots that hadn't yet evolved. Today, mycelial networks are everywhere. In forests, grasslands, deserts, even Arctic tundra. Anywhere there's organic matter, there are likely fungi breaking it down, connecting plants, and cycling nutrients. Some mycologists believe these networks are one of nature's most important structures, as vital to ecosystems as root systems or river networks. They regulate nutrient flow, support plant diversity, and stabilize soil. When forests are clear-cut or soil is heavily tilled, these networks are destroyed. It can take decades for them to recover. And without them, the land becomes less productive, less resilient, less alive. As we settle deeper into this exploration, picture the ground beneath you. If you're anywhere near trees or plants, there's a good chance that inches below the surface, fungal threads are spreading, connecting, dissolving, and building. A hidden architecture, older than most of what we see, working quietly to sustain the visible world. Death in nature is never an ending, it's a transformation. And fungi are the primary agents of that transformation, the organisms that turn what was once alive back into raw materials for new life. This process, decomposition, is slow and methodical. It requires the right conditions, moisture, temperature, oxygen, and the right enzymes to break down complex molecules into simpler ones. Fungi specialize in breaking down some of nature's toughest materials. Cellulose, the structural component of plant cell walls. Lignin, the rigid polymer that makes wood strong and resistant to decay. Even keratin, the protein in hair, feathers, and hooves. These molecules are difficult to digest. They are chemically stable, designed by evolution to resist breaking down. But fungi have evolved enzymes capable of cleaving these bonds, pulling apart the long molecular chains and releasing the energy stored within. Wood decomposition is a perfect example. When a tree dies and falls, it might seem solid and unchanging. But within days, fungal spores land on the bark. If conditions are moist, they germinate, sending hyphae into cracks and wounds in the wood. The hyphae release enzymes that begin breaking down lignin and cellulose. Slowly, over months and years, the wood softens. Its structure weakens. It begins to crumble. Different fungi specialize in different stages. Some attack freshly dead wood, breaking down the easiest materials first. Others colonize later, working on the tougher lignin that earlier fungi couldn't fully digest. Still others come last, finishing the job, turning the final fragments into humus, rich organic soil. A single log might take decades to fully decompose, passing through the work of dozens of fungal species. By the end, what was once a solid tree trunk is reduced to dark, nutrient-rich earth. This process releases carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, completing the carbon cycle. Trees absorb CO2 from the air and lock it into wood through photosynthesis. Fungi release that carbon when they decompose the wood. It's a balance, intake and release, growth and decay. Without decomposition, carbon would accumulate in dead tissue. Forests would fill with fallen trees and leaves, unable to recycle their nutrients. Soil would become barren. The cycle of life would slow and eventually stop. Fungi also decompose animal matter, though they're less commonly associated with it. When an animal dies, bacteria usually begin the process. But fungi follow, breaking down tougher tissues, hair, bones, spreading through the remains and gradually reducing them to soil. Even human bodies, when left to natural decomposition, are colonized by fungi. It's an uncomfortable thought, but it's also a reminder that we're part of the same cycles as everything else. The atoms in our bodies will one day feed soil, which will feed plants, which will feed animals. Fungi ensure with you that cycle continues. In ecosystems like rainforests, where humidity is high and temperatures are warm, decomposition happens quickly. A fallen leaf might be fully broken down within weeks. The forest floor is constantly recycled, with nutrients moving rapidly from dead matter back into living plants. In colder climates, decomposition slows. In boreal forests and tundra, fallen logs can persist for decades. Frozen soil inhibits fungal growth, and the short growing season limits how much decomposition can occur each year. But even in these harsh environments, fungi persist. Cold-adapted species grow slowly through frozen wood, working year by year, gradually returning nutrients to soil that will eventually support new growth. Some fungi have even learned to break down substances that seem completely inedible. There are fungi that can digest petroleum, breaking down oil spills in soil. Others can degrade plastics, though very slowly, offering a glimpse of how nature might eventually cope with synthetic materials. Scientists are studying these fungi, hoping to harness their abilities for bioremediation, using living organisms to clean up pollution. It's early work, but the potential is significant. If fungi can be encouraged to break down pollutants more quickly, they might help repair some of the damage humans have caused. Fungi also play a role in soil formation itself. As they break down rock and organic matter, they create the substrate that plants need to grow. The thin layer of soil that covers much of the Earth's surface is, in part, a product of fungal activity. Over thousands of years, fungi and other decomposers have turned bare rock into fertile ground. Every forest, every grassland, every garden exists because of this slow, patient transformation. Now, let's talk about something fungi produce during decomposition. Mushrooms. These fruiting bodies are the fungus's way of spreading its spores, but they also serve another function. They attract animals. Many animals eat mushrooms. Deer, squirrels, insects, even slugs. When they do, they ingest spores along with the mushroom tissue. Those spores pass through the digestive system unharmed and are deposited elsewhere, often far from where the mushroom grew. It's a dispersal strategy. The animal gets nutrition, and the fungus gets its spores spread across a wider area. Some fungi even produce mushrooms that smell like rotting meat, attracting flies that spread spores as they move from one mushroom to another. Other fungi are more subtle. Truffles, for instance, grow underground. They release strong, distinctive odors that attract mammals like pigs and rodents. These animals dig up the truffles, eat them, and spread the spores through their droppings. Truffles have become prized by humans for their flavor, and they're now cultivated in orchards, inoculated onto tree roots to form mycorrhizal partnerships. It's one of the few ways humans have directly harnessed fungal biology for food production. But most fungi remain wild, uncultivated, and largely unnoticed. They work quietly in leaf, litter, in rotting logs, in the soil beneath your feet, breaking down the old, recycling nutrients, preparing the ground for whatever comes next. Humans have used fungi for thousands of years, often without realizing what they were. Bread, beer, wine, cheese, all depend on fungi. Specifically, yeasts and molds that ferment sugars, produce alcohol, and transform raw ingredients into something new. Yeast is a single-celled fungus. It lives on the surface of fruits and grains and when conditions are right, it consumes sugar and produces carbon dioxide and alcohol as byproducts. Bakers use this process to make dough rise. Brewers and winemakers use it to create alcoholic beverages. Cheese making also involves fungi. Molds like penicillium are deliberately introduced to milk or aging cheese, where they break down fats and proteins, creating the distinctive flavors of blue cheese, brie, and camembert. These processes have been refined over centuries, but they all rely on the same basic fungal behavior: external digestion and fermentation. In the 20th century, fungi gave humanity one of its most important medical discoveries. Penicillin, the first widely used antibiotic, is produced by a mold, Penicillium notatum. Alexander Fleming discovered it accidentally in 1928 when he noticed that a contaminated petri dish had a zone where bacteria couldn't grow. The mold was producing a chemical that killed bacteria. That chemical, penicillin, revolutionized medicine. Infections that had once been fatal became treatable. Millions of lives have been saved because of a molecule produced by a fungus. Since then, other fungi have been found to produce useful compounds, immunosuppressants, cholesterol-lowering drugs. Even some cancer treatments have been derived from fungal chemistry. Fungi are also being explored for sustainable materials. Mycelium can be grown into specific shapes and dried to create a biodegradable alternative to plastic foam. It's lightweight, strong, and fully compostable. Companies are using it for packaging, insulation, even leather-like materials. There's also interest in using fungi to create building materials. Mycelium can bind agricultural waste into bricks and panels, offering a renewable alternative to conventional construction materials. In agriculture, fungi have a more complicated role. Some fungi are crop pathogens, causing blights and rots that devastate harvests. The Irish potato famine was caused by a fungus-like organism. Wheat rust, a fungal disease, continues to threaten global grain supplies. But other fungi protect crops. Mycorrhizal fungi improve plant health, helping them access nutrients and resist stress. Farmers are beginning to inoculate fields with beneficial fungi, reducing the need for chemical fertilizers. There's also growing interest in using fungi to restore damaged ecosystems. Mycoremediation, the use of fungi to break down pollutants, is being tested in contaminated soils. Certain fungi can absorb heavy metals, degrade pesticides, and even break down oil. Reforestation efforts are also starting to include fungi. When trees are planted in degraded land, they often struggle to establish roots in poor soil. But if the soil is inoculated with mycorrhizal fungi, the young trees have a much better chance of survival. It's a recognition that trees and fungi are partners. You can't restore a forest by planting trees alone. You need to restore the underground network as well. On a more speculative note, some researchers believe fungi could play a role in space exploration. Mycelium grows in low-gravity environments and can be cultivated on waste materials. Future Mars colonies might use fungi to produce food, recycle waste, and even create building materials from Martian regolith. It's a long way off, but it's a reminder that fungi are remarkably adaptable. They've survived on Earth for hundreds of millions of years through ice ages and mass extinctions. They might yet accompany us to other worlds. For now, though, they remain mostly unseen, working beneath forests and grasslands, inside rotting logs and along tree roots, breaking down the dead, nourishing the living, connecting ecosystems in ways we're only beginning to understand. As we come to the end of our journey through the fungal kingdom, let's return to where we started. The idea of a hidden network, a web of connections beneath the surface, sustaining life in ways that are easy to overlook. Fungi remind us that the world is more interconnected than it appears. Trees are not isolated individuals. They're nodes in a network linked by fungal threads that move nutrients, water, and possibly even information. Decomposition is not an ending. It's a transformation, a recycling, the closing of one loop and the opening of another. And life itself depends on organisms we rarely see, working slowly, patiently, in darkness and silence. The next time you walk through a forest, or across a lawn, or even past a rotting log, remember what's happening just below the surface. Hyphae spreading, mycelium connecting, spores waiting, a hidden kingdom, vast and ancient, doing the quiet work that makes everything else possible. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. I hope it gave you a new appreciation for fungi, for decomposition, and for the invisible architecture of the natural world. As you drift towards sleep tonight, picture those underground networks, threads extending through soil, dissolving the old, nourishing the new, connecting life in a slow, patient web that has existed far longer than we have. And rest easy, knowing that even in stillness, even in darkness, life continues its work, unseen, unhurried, endlessly renewing. Sleep well.